told you that in Hollywood, it's 3 and then quiet. You don't say 2 and 1, then they point.
That's what I've been doing. I learned. Watch. I
You were talking. I could hear you counting.
Oh, you can't see me?
No, I can see you. I can hear you too. They couldn't hear you. It doesn't matter. So you like the new background?
Yeah, love that new background. Yeah.
Thank you. I built this myself.
What's the? Did you actually? Is it a tarp?
No, it's a flag.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
What is a flag? But what is a
flag?
I
didn't even hang it up. Chuck hung it up.
Has value.
So I didn't do nothing.
What is the statue?
Oh, so this is something I've had for a while. I got this in 2017, the American Patriot of Character.
Oh,
I just
thought how many did they give out a year?
Let's just say 1. I don't know. I know that Colin Powell has one, and I have one. So let's just go with that.
That's meaningful.
Yeah.
He was a Secretary of State, right?
All the time. Huh?
He was a Secretary of State, correct?
I wasn't prepared for that question.
Oh. See, that's why you have me, Noah.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith.
In my defense, he was before I was in. He was because that was back there in Desert Storm.
Hey, Keith, do you know when if Colin Powell was a Secretary of State? That's what Noah and I are currently debating. I think he was.
And I'm glad Keith made it on. Sometimes I see Keith at the gym and I tell him to hurry up and get home so we can log in. What time is it? What time we got?
6:56.
Oh, so we got all right. So we're not going live yet, or not going into the show yet. He was a Secretary of State. Yep, Chuck confirmed it.
Boom.
So you got your cardigan on.
I do. I wore that.
And now I'm self-conscious.
Be on a 3-week rotation.
Well, you got me self-conscious of my V-necks because you said a friend of yours said it's outdated and it looks like an undershirt, like we're old men, and I have a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's an issue. Like, fashion is trendy, but the thing with you, Noah, is you have so much confidence. It doesn't matter what you wear. You're clearly a healthy guy. Your body. Robbie says a V-neck is timeless. It is timeless, depending on how you rock it.
Robbie, thank you. You know what? It's probably the compression sock that makes it look a little funny with my when I wear my khaki shorts. It looks really like an old man.
We're all getting older. We are all getting older, and that is just a fact of life.
I know my hair's turning gray. Yours is.
You can't tell if mine's turning gray. That's the best part. I'm going to be like The Rock. Last week when you said, what actor would you like to act, act for you? And I thought Jason Statham was great, but I've always thought of how old is The Rock? No one knows. The Rock is, after he shaved his head, kind of looked the exact same forever.
Yeah. Didn't he show back up on wrestling recently?
Oh, he always does. Apparently he does special appearances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good gig.
I don't know. I think it breaks down your body pretty hard.
He's 52 years old.
Who found that out?
Look, man, I have it's like Google in my head.
Yeah. You're going to be like, he was born on March 16th.
May 2nd. He's 52 years old.
Yeah. May 2nd, 1972. Very close to Dad's birthday. Are you still using ChatGPT a fair bit?
Yeah, I love ChatGPT.
I started using it more this week.
I talk to it. I call him Chad GPT.
Do you actually?
Yeah, because my kids make fun of me because I'm always talking to my phone. I'm a curious person. I like to know what's going on.
Have you experimented with any of the other AI agents?
No, I downloaded the latest one, the one that's like their logo's a whale, but I'm so ingrained in ChatGPT. What's the one with the whale on it?
I'm not sure. It's 3 seconds till time.
All right, we're going. You know what? It's time to go.
Light it up.
But yes, I've played with them. Let's do it. Let's go to this intro. Let's do our show. All right, Stephen. So I think we agree. We like the live episodes.
Love the live episodes.
Yeah, it feels like we get to converse with people. Now, this is exciting because this is our first time to do a live and have a guest.
So excited.
And I don't want to put it off. I want to hurry up and get Diego on. Diego Ugalde. He may correct me on how I say his name, but this guy, 20 years Navy SEAL. He's gone on to do leadership, the Trident approach. He's also a psychedelic coach. He's done his book, which has been in the background of every episode. I'm a big fan of Diego and his book, Leading from the Deep. Let's bring Diego on. Diego, pronounce
Welcome.
your last name.
You know, we're going to put sound effects. We're going to put sound. I wish we had sound effects where like the crowd just goes crazy.
Cheering.
Ah.
Now, Diego, is it Ugalde?
You're on mute.
We lost the mic.
You're on mute.
Oh,
No, he's stepping to his mic.
your mic's down.
See, and this
We
is
didn't
the-
want to hear you. We
this
just
is
wanted
the
to look
beautiful
at
part
you.
about live.
Yeah. Hold on. We'll get there.
I mean, in the meantime, while we experiment, you keep talking and hopefully Chuck figures it out. So I was going to joke around in the beginning of the podcast, Noah, and say, yeah, let's just get right to it because nobody wants to hear about me getting fit for my new driver last week and my numbers being the exact same. It was so disappointing. I waited 2 years for new technology.
Hold on. Yeah.
Hang your phone and get his text up.
Okay. Yep. Hold on. We're going to,
Tell him to sign out. Tell him.
All right. Diego, sign out real quick. He's going to text you from my phone. We're going to reset you up. All right. Then, yeah, while we're doing that. So wait a minute. You got fitted for clubs?
No,
And
just
it
to
didn't
drive.
improve
My
your
iron
game?
was
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Yeah. And,
You know-
my numbers were the exact same. It was so.
Yeah, but it comes down to the short game.
Yeah, but well, not for me because my short game's really, really solid. I can scramble. What I need is more distance
Better driver.
so that I can just play longer golf courses. Like one of my clients, he's a scratch handicap, plays at literally one of the best golf courses in Canada, and it measures at 7,200 yards. That's just too much golf for me. Whereas if I was hoping I would get a free 5 miles an hour. Oh, he's back.
We got you, Diego?
Can you guys hear me?
Yay!
There we go. There
There's
we
that
go.
voice. People have been waiting
All
for that.
right.
I guess it's just a matter of rebooting.
Yes.
When
it's
you were
okay.
in
Hey,
the
you know what?
field, did you ever have comms go down? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, not ever. Just kidding.
Not ever.
There's a whole movie about comms going down in the SEAL teams.
Do you have a story of something happening that was like comms went down and it was just chaos and you had to jump in or there was a sign of leadership that you experienced that was impressive from that?
You mean you'd like a story about me that impressed me? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Yes.
One time I really impressed myself. I was
Yeah.
amazing. Check this shit out.
Okay, so Diego, for people who don't know, were you a SEAL like commander or were you like in the SEAL? Like how exactly does a SEAL team? What's the organizational structure?
Wow. So for example, if I have my numbers right, there's something like 500 people in a SEAL team. And then of those 500, about 250 of them are operators. So we have support folks like medical, logistics, admin, supply, and all that stuff. So out of those 250 operators, they're broken down. God, it's been a while since I retired in 2018. So we had six platoons, and each platoon had, or a troop. We had 6 troops, and each troop had 2 platoons within them, and each platoon had 16 people. So if there's people good at math or tracking, but essentially in a troop. So I was in a troop, and the funny thing was, I'd be out on a bar in Virginia Beach, and somebody would say something about being a SEAL. I'm like, you're a SEAL? And I'm like, yeah, what team are you at? Or at team 2. And I'm like, I'm at team 2. And I'm like, this motherfucker isn't at team 2. And then I start talking, I'm like, wait a minute, he totally is. And so we would be at the same team and not even know,
Not even know each other.
even at the team. So that's how like segregated the troops are. The troops do their own workups together. They're the ones who do all deployments and everything together, but they're very, very separate from other troops within the team. So within that, when you go down there, you have your senior enlisted advisor. I don't know if it's still this way, but then you have, did I say senior enlisted advisor? Then you have like your commander, who's basically like the officer in charge of the troop. And then you have, just like everything else in the military, you got your 2 tracks of ones who are in charge of the platoon, and then you have your fire team leaders, and we have LPOs, leading petty officers, which are kind of like the conduit between the sled dogs and the senior leadership. So, yeah,
a dog, a SEAL that's out in the field.
Well, they're all almost always they're all out in the field. All the operators within a troop are all out in the field. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but almost always it was, at least it was that way when I was in. And so, yeah. But also sometimes you could go out 3 or 4 at a time. One time I went out entirely by myself. So you never really know how the whole thing is going to, work itself out. But the people who are always kind of staying in the rear, so to speak, those are the ones who are much higher up on the echelon, like beyond the SEAL troop level, usually speaking. And so I was an enlisted guy. So I came in the Navy as an E1, and I ended up retiring as an E8, or what we call a senior chief petty officer.
That's all. So you retired in 2018.
Yeah.
When did you? Okay, I'm gonna jump into your book. When did you decide to do the book? And in the book, you talk about an experience that you had with some others with 5-MeO DMT, and that was what really changed your mindset. Or do I have it?
No.
5-MeO when you were enlisted?
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to when I was enlisted.
Nobody ever does. Nobody ever does anything they're not supposed to whenever they're, in anyone's, right?
And I'm not saying that just to be funny or whatever, but I really didn't. I didn't drink and drive. I didn't do all the stuff that we always do. It seems like I was pretty straight. I hardly ever smoked marijuana before I was in the Navy. I even have a break in service. So I was in the military for like almost 5 years. I got out for 5 years, and then I came back in. And even during that break, I didn't really do much. It just wasn't my thing. And then, but I had to think a little bit from Noah's question, because did it change my mindset? The key word being set, like the way I see it, or the way that I'm hearing it, is my approach. And so then, yes, it totally did. Sorry, that took me a while to do the math there, because I was like, man, what is that? Did it? Because it changed so many things, like in an instant, everything changed. And one of the things that changed instantly was everything I thought I knew about who I am as a human was all wrong. And everything, and I mean wrong, like, well, maybe somebody's got their own opinions or this or that. No, this was absolutely clear, total, full alignment, deep-rooted truth with like a capital T. This is true, that I am not who I thought that I was. And the same exact thing applied to the world around me. This world around me isn't what I think it is. And so that changed in an instant. Another reason why I paused after Noah asked that question was because it took me a long, and in some ways it's still happening today, it took me a long time to integrate the realizations and the understanding, or at least my level of understanding of what I experienced into how I live, to how it's just like a normal way of a state of being for myself now. Some parts, not all parts. I'm still learning, but that happened instantly. But then again, there were many things that, yeah, as I just said, it's just still ongoing about learning from that single experience back in 2019. So it wasn't that long ago, really.
For everybody that's listening, I met Diego in Peru doing an ayahuasca retreat. I have done a lot of, I guess the word experimenting. I've been on a big mental health journey, and so psychedelics have been a big part of that. I've done psilocybin, ayahuasca, and I know you've done a lot more other things. And I can completely relate to, like, I still have a long way to go. But I had told somebody, I was in a group the other day of a bunch of people that were talking about different experiences. And I said that I would compare it to prior to trying psilocybin, I viewed the world through this dirty lens that I didn't know was even dirty until I saw the other side. And I'm aware of how I viewed the world before, but it blows my mind how differently the world can be viewed once your perspective has changed. And I feel like, and you say in your book, I forgot who it was you quoted, but they said that, psychedelics are the telescope for astrology or the microscope to biology. It allows you to see things. It's how you're able to see the change. And that I can completely relate to from my experiences. Like, it does change your perspective on how you view things.
So, Diego, what got you to want to do 5-MeO DMT in 2019?
Explain what it is to those that are listening.
It's the frog serum, is it not? Off the back of a frog's? Yeah. And you smoke it, and it's apparently like a moonshot, like just a rocket ship. It's a capital T truth, like you said. That's what I hear. I've never done 5-MeO DMT. Honestly, I've been too afraid to do it if I didn't have the right support structures in place, because I just hear it's.
And I know that, and before we go into any more, I know, Diego, because you share it in your book, and I'm sorry I keep jumping in, but I know, and you've said this before when I first met you, that you don't like to share a lot of your experiences because you don't want it to hinder someone else's expectations.
Yeah.
If they go into it. Yeah. So we can keep it as light as you want, but yeah, if you could explain what 5-MeO DMT is to our listeners.
Yeah. So I don't mind necessarily talking about it here on this platform. Where I don't like talking about it is like when we're at the retreat and there are people whose eyes are huge because they don't know what's about to happen and then everyone who's in the group who might have done psychedelics, when they start rattling off what they know or what they think they know about it, it can be very confusing and distracting. So yeah, and the whole idea of expectations, books are funny because it's just where I was when I wrote it. There's nothing more. It's not actual knowledge. It's just my best guess at what I am experiencing in this life. That's all it is. So there are things that I might say today that are different than are in the book. And maybe that's one of them, because to me, it's like no longer am I in this space of, oh, well, that can be challenging. This needs to be avoided. Like, no, let's get at, if attachment and expectations are issues for you, believe me telling something to you, for example, is not going to be the trick. Like, that's the whole idea with psychedelics is, yes, please bring it on, because the more disruptive it is to me, that just means the bigger lesson that I get an opportunity to learn. So if people get attached, for example, to an experience based off of what I say here, for example, that's perfect, because then the journey that they must go through in realizing the whole idea of attachment and expectation and letting go attachment and expectation is literally perfect. I don't have to do anything. That's God's got it. He's got it. I don't have to worry about doing his job. So it's the journey. That's in learning those lessons on their own. That's really where the real learning comes from. Certainly not anything that I say here on the podcast today. That's for sure. So, yeah. So I often mispronounce this word, 5-methyl-dextrotryptamine, which is 5-MeO-DMT. It's the poison that comes out of the sacs on the backs of the Sonoran desert toads, and also that's really where the main source of it comes from. And yeah, like you said, they withdraw it, they dry it out, they crystallize it, and then you smoke it, and you really are gone almost instantly. And the reason why you're gone so quickly is because it has almost like the combination lock to your blood-brain barrier. So typically what would keep medicines, we've all taken medicine, and it takes us a long time to feel the effects of those medicines. That's because the blood-brain barrier is doing its job to protect the body from things that shouldn't be there. Well, 5-MeO-DMT is a naturally occurring element that happens within the body. They think they know that it's released twice in our life, some when we're born and then when we die. And there are some people who say that it's also released when we dream, but who knows? But essentially, the body kind of fiends for it, which is weird because we naturally produce it, but it's not being produced in these huge quantities. So when you smoke it, I mean, I'm telling you, it's 10 seconds gone. And yeah, it's super powerful. From what we understand, it's the most powerful psychedelic in the world. And the reason, but it only lasts 15 or 20 minutes. The reason why they say it's the most powerful psychedelic in the world, as opposed to like some other psychedelics like ibogaine, for example, where it's like 12 to 16 hours. And it's huge. It's ibogaine's a mountain. But the reason why they say 5-MeO-DMT is even more powerful so than that is because it's the only psychedelic that we know that like instantly pulls you out of mind-body awareness into the idea of observing and experiencing all that is. That's why it's so powerful. And for us, how our brains are programmed, we don't know how to. It's almost too much. It's like being kicked off a 500-foot cliff into the like you just you don't know how to handle it. But
sorry,
what's that?
I was going to say, when you had your experience, was it guided?
100%. Yeah. Yes.
And
I've never done psychedelics like that without having shamanic healers present.
And then Bob has a question of, how is it related from is it a controlled substance?
So, and forgive me if I'm answering this not in the way that he's looking for, but controlled substance, for example, the way that I know this is, so they scheduled drugs back in the 70s, and there's a really twisted reasoning that I'm aware of that is behind how all that came to be. So I'll try not to take up too much time, but basically they were trying to push certain medications and drugs, and they were trying to oust other ones. And during those times, like the hippie movement, and so hippies were doing psychedelics, and so they were trying to really steer the world away from there. So when they scheduled these drugs to put them in different classifications, they made it like Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4. Schedule 1 drugs are drugs that have no medicinal purposes, and they have a high potentiality for addiction. So like crack cocaine, they put psychedelics in that same schedule, which is literally ludicrous because we think we know based off all these studies that we've been doing since the 1940s. They're all coming back overwhelmingly positive that they have huge medicinal benefits and they have no addictive properties whatsoever, like none. So it's literally the antithesis of a Schedule 1 drug, but they put it there because it allows people to see things that people who are in charge of making sure that law and order and the confinement of law is being followed. They're like, we don't want these people thinking on their own. I mean, that's really where it came from. So it's controlled in that way, but
because they were experimenting. They were experimenting with it, like the CIA, LSD, things like that. They were aware. Yeah,
back in the 70s, they were doing this stuff, and they were realizing they were giving LSD to soldiers, and soldiers were not feeling the need to fight anymore. They're like, this is the dumbest thing ever. What are we doing? And they just stopped training, and they're like, oh, we can't. Because they were trying to figure out
counterintuitive to
the mission.
Yeah, that sense of oneness, wholeness, completeness, acceptance, love.
I don't need to fight anybody, you know, and all these. It can happen because I've also known people to go through massive psychedelic medicines, and they go on with their jobs, and I've known people to go on and take lives and things post big giant ceremonies. So, you know, everybody's on their own path. That is for sure. But
I was going to say, how did your path then lead there? Like, so coming out of SEALs, how did you end up all of a sudden one day, I'm going to try psychedelics?
Yeah. So we started a leadership development company that Noah mentioned before, the Trident approach. And so we were just teaching organizations and individuals how SEALs work and communicate so well together. It was this really cool company, and we were having a really good time. And about a year after we began, one of my Pathfinders came to me. He's also a SEAL. And he said, hey, man, I'm not coming to work next week. There's an organization that takes SEALs down to Mexico and treats their PTS, TBI, addiction, all that stuff with psychedelics. And I was really shocked, honestly, because that was the first time in my life I'd ever heard of psychedelics being used in the context of mental health. To me, before then, it was always for like music festivals or going to Disneyland or something, you know, mental health. But at the same time, I didn't care because he was smacked up pretty good with PTS. We knew it. And traumatic brain injury, he had a load of that. He was addicted to Ambien. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I was like, bro, do your thing. I can't wait to see you when you get back. He comes back. He had a light in his eyes and a vibrancy to his smile we had never seen before. I mean, even his skin color was different. We're like, bro, what happened? And he said, I have no words. Life-changing. I got to introduce you to these people. So it wasn't long after that, I found myself in Mexico just observing, and I watched them literally saving the lives of these guys that I knew right out from under my nose. And they said, hey, we got an extra dose if you want to try. And so for me, number one, I was out of the military, so nobody was going to be monitoring my pee. So I'm like, all right, that's cool. Yeah. I used to have nightmares when I was active duty that I accidentally smoked marijuana. Like it scared the crap out of me. But now I'm like, shoot, I could do anything I want. Like, hell yeah, I'm going to do this. And then number two, of all the worst things that I've ever experienced in my life, there had nothing compared to what these other guys were going through. So I'm like, well, if they can do it, then I can totally do this, because I really am. I'm the luckiest person I've ever met. So I went into the medicine just with the idea of the possibility that this could just be this really very beautiful, flowery, expansive. I didn't even know the word expansive back then. And nothing nothing could have been further from the truth. It just showed me all the stuff I had been shoving down inside of me and pretending that I had forgiven, or acting like I had forgotten, or whatever it was. I just didn't know how to handle all that stuff. And it all came out, and, thank God, you can't clean something you don't know is dirty. Or I don't know if that's true or not, but it seemed like it was true. I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't paying attention to it. I wasn't working on it. I didn't feel like there was a need to. And then it was like, uh-oh, there's all this stuff, bro.
I would, for me, I was telling somebody the other day, my experience with psilocybin, it makes me very emotional. And what I've learned from that experience is I didn't realize how much sadness I was pushing down.
Yeah.
And I compared it the other day to, those tears were the moisture that was forming this storm cloud that I lived in. And all I experienced was the thunder and lightning. And then once I was able to see it and then release that, it's slowly starting to pull those clouds away. Now the rain is starting to fall. I am much more emotional, especially anytime I do it. I am an emotional wreck, but it's because I've shoved all these things down for so long. They talk about the ego is gone, and it brings that out of you. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, my experience has always been something that you could do it and move beyond it, or you can choose to learn from the experience and do the work to improve yourself, because it shows you yourself in a way that you may not have experienced before, and you have to do the work to build off of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love what you said about moving past it, because that's at least the way I understand what our cultural approach is to trauma. It's like, suck it up, especially as men. We're thrashed around the streets like garbage for a lot of reasons, and you're a guy and you start to show emotions, it's like, what's your problem? Like, you can't even leak, you can't even off gas, you can't even release horrible things. You got to keep it all in. And no wonder why our suicide rate is so much higher than women, and all the things. It's just because we're not allowed to be how we actually are. Not allowed to show pain, not allowed to show weakness, not allowed, in other words, to be human, is crazy. And then when we are human, it's just public lashings from all sides. And so what happens in psychedelics, sometimes you don't have any choice but to be as human is, man. And all the snot and all the stuff comes out, and it's, I really love holding space with people who don't even have the strength to lie to themselves anymore. Like, that's the best, because it's finally let go. Finally let go, because we spend I don't typically like saying things like we do this and we do that, but as men, generally speaking, we hold that shit in. Because you're weak, and if you're a weak man, then you don't belong in the tribe, and if you don't belong in the tribe, you're extricated, and if you don't have any connection, you're dead. So in other words, if you show weakness, it's a death sentence, subconsciously, in the whole thing. And so that's what I love about psychedelics, is they just start laughing and they're like, here we go. It's just like it all comes out. And you can breathe, you can dance. That's why the skin color changes. That's why the light comes back in the eyes. That's why the twinkle comes back in the smile, because there's so much goddamn weight has just been gone. It's amazing. And that's how we would be if we were allowed to cry, if we were allowed to say, this is hard as shit. and I may not be strong enough in this moment to overcome this, but we'll figure it out. Like those are we would be, and Americans especially hate to soccer. If you watch soccer, especially in like the South America, those guys are always just like their hands are here, they're screaming, they're rolling around on the ground. That's what everybody can. If it hurts, it doesn't hurt. It's like, it's okay. Yeah. Yes. Everybody in the stadium doesn't see you hurting.
You're hurting, right?
But it is like just breaking you down, just one little chip at a time for you, not allowing yourself to be as you are. That's the thing. So, yeah.
And so, so much of that is, because of society, because of how a lot of us are raised, but then we carry that. Because I know for me, releasing it, I realized I was the one choosing to hold it in. I was choosing it, and now I'm choosing not to. Of course, there's a time and a place. Like I'm not out at Walmart trying to break down to the lady at the cash register. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place, but I am not afraid to feel those emotions. And it has helped with my anger. It has helped. You mentioned in your book, and this is a great comparison I have found, is I used to get angry driving, road rages. I think we can all relate to that. And now I'm capable of not letting something trigger me and then realizing, hey, there's something else going on that I'm not aware of, and that's okay. And I don't have to let this anger build up inside of me and ruin my day, if that makes any sense. Like, I know that we went from talking about being emotional to my anger being an issue, but because now I let my sadness come out where it's necessary, whether it's watching a movie or having a moment with my child or my wife or whatever, well, then those moments down the road that would trigger me to be angry, it wasn't the anger of what happened. It was because the emotion I was holding in that was festering up, and it prevents that now. Do you have any of those kind of experience? Is that relatable at all to you or Stephen in just life? Do you feel like things fester up over time?
I mean, I'll let Diego go first.
Yeah, I try not to let things like, so for example, the line, and this is, you were talking before about doing the work. It's not so straightforward on how to go about doing this stuff. For example, there's not a lot of people that would fault you for being like not allowing yourself to be triggered for all the obvious reasons. And the deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper you go into the work, one can come to understand that it's the same thing. It's just a little bit less. In other words, if I recognize that I'm triggered, I don't anymore. I used to. I don't say, "Oh, hold on a second. We're better than this. We've done a lot of work. We know, rationally speaking, that there is no, the anger is not with him. It's resistance to what is. Not allowing myself to just sit in the space of experiencing a trigger. Not saying, oh, no, don't do that. Because even that is another.
There's something. It's
still shoving it down. I think it's healthier and more advanced and more expansive to be what you're talking about, as opposed to like, I'm not even angry, or completely blowing up. And what I'm talking about, allowing and accepting the idea of being triggered, I'm not talking about, oh, he triggered me, pissed me off, and I know this, so I'm going to go get retribution. It's allowing that feeling to be, while fully allowing it to be, while knowing that anger is within me and nowhere else.
Okay.
So not making myself in trouble with myself, like not being my own dad and just be like, you're not supposed to do that. It's like, no, this is happening. And I'm fully allowing this to be as it is. And
sit in it and experience it.
allow it to be with the understanding that that anger is within, and it has nothing to do with that person cutting you off. There's that really cool Buddhist parable where this Buddhist walks up to a lake and he notices an overturned boat there, and he goes, oh, it might be a good idea if I get in this boat and paddle out to the middle of the lake and meditate for a while. So he goes and he does it, and he's sitting there in stillness and quiet, and something hits his boat. And just before he opens his eyes, he gets angry at what obviously this fisherman was not paying attention, that he was meditating. And so he opens up his eyes and there's nothing there. There's just a little piece of driftwood came by and just knocked into his boat. And it was in that moment, he wasn't angry at the fisherman. You can't be angry at a stick. The anger is within him. And so it was just a really cool way of coming to know that however we respond to the world around us has everything to do with how we are within. But it has to be allowed to be. In order to get to this place where it doesn't, where it literally genuinely doesn't trigger you by being cut off, you have to allow yourself to be fucking triggered. And all its glory, all the fireworks and all the stuff, and whether that comes through hitting the bag or whatever, you just have to let it be. But it can't be in trouble for showing up, or you can't think of yourself as less of a person or not as developed or spiritually alive, whatever, because it's just the same thing over and over again if there's resistance to what is. Wow.
I love that. That's a higher level than I am. I'm still working to get to your level, Diego. Real quick, Alex had a question. Is there work being done to get this legalized in the U.S.? As we're talking about psychedelics, what do you know about what's going on? We'll answer that, and then whatever. If Stephen has something, they want to go into what you're doing next. But yeah, do you know of anything what they're doing?
Yes. So people have their thoughts about RFK Jr. But I can tell you one thing is we have no stronger supporter in the psychedelic world than him. He knows what these medicines are capable of doing, and he's the one who's in charge of all this stuff. And I love it. It was the coolest thing ever. This was not long after the FDA said, oh, there's not enough evidence that shows that MDMA is actually effective, which is total. It's obvious they've got other things going on besides the welfare of other human beings. So he said something to the effect of, hey, if I get passed, if they pass me into this job, just so you know, if you work for the FDA, you better pack your bags. Because he's like, I don't even care, because you're involved in the situation that does what it does. You can't be trusted. So I'm gonna start freaking slinging people out of there. And so, like I said, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't like that. And what I know of the FDA and how they contribute to, it's weird. You'd never expect it, but the FDA is hugely responsible for the health issues in our country, like the disproportionate issues that we have as Americans, just like the Department of Education is responsible for how jacked up our educational system is. You'd never expect it. So he sees what it is, and because he's in the position that he's in, my guess is that, and like I said, we've been doing studies. They have been doing studies on these things since the 40s. It's just undeniable, really, for anybody who actually looks. So my guess is that it's just a matter of time. Guys like Senator Dan Crenshaw out of Texas, he knows what they do. There's a lot, and it's both sides, left and right, sees the value in psychedelics. It's just a matter, unfortunately, of overcoming the pharmaceutical interest. That is the thing that is in the way. So if they can overcome that, then we're there. And,
I've said that I'm sorry, Stephen, I keep jumping in. I'm sorry. But one more thing, I have said before that I think veterans are going to be the ones who are going to lead the way in mental health. Because people love to see what we're doing as veterans, and they respect it. They know that we've had a lot of trauma, childhood, that leads to why we do what we do, and then that's added trauma, what we do. And I know that there's a lot of veterans who are experiencing psychedelics and having these traumatic changes. And that's for me what excites me, that things are going to change. Because even in Canada, where Stephen is, they do MDMA therapy. They have things happening. And Dan Crenshaw, you mentioned, he's a veteran. So I think veterans are going to lead the way in what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And with that, Stephen, you care if I'd keep? No, Stephen, ask your question. I keep jumping in front of you. I'm sorry.
No,
I get
keep running, keep running. I love the parable of the stick. I'm sitting with that,
sitting in it. Yes.
and I'll always remember one time I was beating myself up. I'm pretty critical on myself, and I called my best friend, lives in Sunset Beach, California, and we're talking, and he's like, "So you're telling me, like, you did this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this and this?" He's like, and I was, it's just the positive feedback loop. It's just churning in my head. Yeah. And like, how stupid was I for this and this? And he goes, "Brother, if I was in this situation, what would you tell me?" And I remember literally getting teary eyed because my eyes are teary eyed right now, just thinking about it, because it was such a good reframe. If a fisherman doesn't hit your boat and it's a stick, who are you mad at? Like, if we're so much harder often on ourselves, like, because my answer to myself compared to my answer to him, wow, all of a sudden fireworks are going off. I don't know if you guys can see that, but boom, from the universe, hello. My answer to myself compared to my answer to him were on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Hopefully,
Well, with the veteran, with Stephen saying and seeing it from a different lens, and then, why did you get, just like the meditation and thing, it was a fisherman. Well, it wasn't a fisherman. Well, what was it that triggered it? And that's what I took from that is, okay, well, there is something there. What is it? Be in it, experience it. Don't push it down, live it. Now, going back to the veterans thing, what are you doing now, Diego? Let's talk about, because I know a little bit of what you're doing. And what were you going to say, Stephen?
I was just going to say two things to the people in the chat. If you haven't watched How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan wrote a really cool book. He's the guy who wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma. Diego's giving a thumbs up as well. There's a Netflix series on it. He also wrote a thick book. That's a great place to start. Also, at Johns Hopkins, they're doing trials. They were in phase 3 for MDMA being used to treat PTSD. I think they've already come up with the decision on that. But the idea is that psilocybin will follow that. Anywho, Diego, I'm also, like Noah, I'm super excited to hear. Okay, so SEALs, your buddy has the transformation and comes back with a sparkle in his eye, like he's in love, a new man, better skin and everything. You go on the journey as well. They have the extra dose. You take it. Capital T truth. Where are you now, and what does tomorrow look like? What are you up to now? Like Noah said.
Yeah, well, it's still probably important to mention. So after that, I started to go down every weekend, just holding space with other veterans who were going through the medicine themselves. And I eventually went on to become a psychedelic integration coach. I've worked with the Mission Within and Heroic Hearts Project for a number of years now. And that's where Noah and I met down in Peru. But all the while, all of this is all of these psychedelic retreats are going on. It just kind of kept pinging that connection is the most powerful medicine we have. If you do psychedelics and you're doing it alone, it's not enough. And you could be connected and not need psychedelics, for example, in order to recover or heal or whatever it is. And I mean connected with the capital C. So knowing who you are, connecting with who you really are, and connecting with community around you. And so we all know the numbers. I think there was a most recent study that was done or released, I think like 3 months ago, saying that we're up to like 40 plus veterans every day dying from suicide on average. And
wow. Are you
They're
serious?
dying. Yeah, they're dying disconnected, which a huge number of that, by the way, is non-combat connected veterans. People, in other words, people never been in war. It's just a certain population that the military attracts, or that we'll just say the military targets to fill their ranks. And so they're coming in with this way. That's why the numbers are so whatever it is that they are in the veteran population. So an amazing thing happened. I had a keynote in Las Vegas last year, and I'm sitting here talking about like some of the most powerful, earth-shaking, shattering experiences I've ever had. I'm looking out over the audience, and there are people on their cell phones, and I'm like, what am I doing that's missing? Because how could anybody listen to a cell phone listening to these stories? So I finished the keynote, and I went home, and I had another keynote in Alaska to give. And so I built that keynote, and I was getting ready to go to Alaska, and somebody calls up. He said, how's it going? I said, I don't know. Like, I felt pretty good about the one in Vegas too, but nobody seemed to give a shit. So anyway, they're like, well, tell me your keynote. So I told them, and I said, it's amazing. Just rearrange the order in how you tell your story and see what happens. So I go to Alaska. I give the keynote. Many people were crying. Everybody was laughing. It was the first time ever I got a standing ovation walking off the stage, just by tweaking these little things. And so that was cool. I was very excited about that. And that was in the back of my mind because somebody that I coach flew out to Alaska to come see my talk. And so I wanted to say thank you. So I took them out to dinner. But I really wanted to talk to them because a few months before they sent me this text that said, dude, I'm being hunted. And there was a picture of a bear in the wild. And I was like, dude, did you live? Like, what happened? Because I didn't hear from him since, you know? So he starts telling me this story. The waiter comes by and drops off like this opulent table full of Alaskan seafood, and I could care less. I'm just like gripped to this dude. He's like, I'm on a 5-day bear hunting trip. This plane drops me off in the middle of Alaska. On the first day, I picked up the trail of the bear, and on the second day, I realized that the bear was hunting me. And I was like, what? And he said, every time a twig broke, I didn't know if it was going to be this bear or not. Every time, I didn't know how to sleep. I didn't know when to sleep. And I knew this thing was coming after me. He said he was looking off at the distance, 70 yards away, and there was like this deflate, and the bear would just be seeing him and then just going down. And then 40 minutes later, he would be at a completely different compass bearing, doing the same thing, just looking at him. So this thing is coming after him, And so he knew it was like hunter against hunter. So he flips up his map. He's like, I know he's using wind direction. I know he's using deflate. So if I stay right here, he's got to come down this trail. He has to. And the next day, the bear came down the trail and he shot him and he lived. So the whole time, I'm on mushrooms, by the way, when he's telling this story. The whole time, I'm like, oh my God. And as he's telling me, this very, very clear message came. People need to hear these stories. And even the name of this, what eventually would go on to be our company, is Warrior Side, came to me. And every veteran I know, they have 20 stories that would just blow the minds of most people in the world. And I mean that. I was saying before how veterans are a certain makeup to be veterans in the first place, to sign up for the military in the first place. Because of that makeup, they have these life experiences that not a lot of people choose to have. They take riskier routes and they do all these crazy things. So every veteran I know has 20 stories that would just shut some people down. And so what if we, and also coming off this high of this really powerful keynote that we just gave, what if we gave training to these veterans to help them tell their stories in a very, very powerful way? Not only so that they can share their stories, but the more they tell their stories in this way that we have with our approach with Warrior Side, they can come to see things, for example, that haven't been resolved, that there's still sourced through anger or shame or judgment or all of these egoic attachments, were these stories that they're telling them that, for example, could give them a lot of really positive attention. And they can feel good after telling the story, but when all the lights are down and all the applause is gone, they're sitting there still stuck with that story, still stuck in the stage of anger and resentment and denial, non-acceptance. So what if we integrated coaching with what story are you telling? Are you telling a story that is in alignment with truth? It is in alignment with what is? Or are you telling a story that is still trying to discover parts of yourself and still trying to discover parts of truth? Because I can tell you, if you're telling a story that hurts you to tell, there's more to come to understand. And so if we can help veterans tell stories that once hurt them or that once caused them pain, telling the stories in such a way that now these stories literally give them life and vibrancy and power and peace, that's the best thing imaginable. They'll be able to connect with themselves on a deeper level, and they'll be able to connect with the community around them, because through their vulnerability and through their authenticity and what is actual truth, it just is going to be a byproduct of how they show up to the world. And so super excited about it.
I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Stephen. No, go ahead.
Do you help people find their truth by, like, does somebody identify their truth through psychedelics?
I shut that shit down. There's no such thing as anybody's truth. What is true is always true. It either did or it did not happen. It either is or it is not. Everything else is perspective, bias, misinformation, survival instinct, anything else. But when truth is so powerful that no one can own it. Truth is enormous. And so and I get why they're saying it. I mean, I hear it on Oprah all the time or whatever. There is an accountability that is no longer there. This is just my truth, man. Then there's no accountability to what is. It's not okay to just go randomly around making shit up. It either did or it didn't happen. If, to the best of your memory, if this is what you experienced, then what that is to the best of your memory, this is what you experienced. And you have to leave space open to maybe that person didn't say that. Maybe that person didn't do, even though you saw it, because our brains are entirely capable of filling in all kinds of blanks, even blanks that aren't even there. So I don't give much room, space, or time for people to talk about their truths. Let's get to what actually truth is. And if you don't know what truth is, I've got amazing news for you. Maybe this thing that's causing you so much suffering isn't the way you think it is. Maybe. Instead of hopping on this train of this inward, downward, dark spiral of illusion. Go ahead, man. I can talk about this.
No, I'm sorry. We're close to wrapping it up, and I want to say, when you first reached out to me and told me about this that you're doing, I shared it with my wife, and it choked me up to tell her about it, because even before I started my mental health journey, I didn't know how to explain to people, but I would always I still, every time I'm going to give a speech, I'm nervous before I walk on stage. I'm sweating profusely. I'm like, this is it. This is where I'm just this all going to just shut down while I'm in front of everybody. But I'm never more comfortable than when I'm standing there in front of a crowd and sharing my story. And I think that for a long time, it was the only time my brain allowed me to experience what I was experiencing in life, because I was sharing it in a story. And I don't know how many times people ever noticed it, but there were certain points in my speech that I would feel my chin quiver if I was talking about my children or whatever it was. And it was the only time I was being real. because then I would come off stage and I'd meet people and it was all back to normal, being, whatever I had to be for everybody. But on stage, it was the only time I felt I was being real with myself. So this is going to do is going to be powerful. It's going to be so incredible. And it's going to allow more veterans and people to share their stories. I've always said everyone has a story. It's just some of us are better at telling that story. And once we learn how to do it, as you've done, as all of us start to do, that's what's going to make the point. That's what's going to make the difference. I love this, Diego. I love it. I'm going to let Stephen close out in a second, but I want to let everyone know that's watching. We're going to have a link to your website in the description, Diego, so people can follow you, check out everything you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love that you're our first guest that we've had on live. Yeah. This was amazing.
I want to have you back on.
Yes. I could sit here.
There's so much more so many more questions I have. Okay, well, how do you empower somebody to share their story? What are a couple takeaways somebody could have? Just to get started, where do they get started? How do they get started? We record for an hour and it's always live.
Yeah, we're going to have you back on.
Yeah, because Noah's coming through the program and we have a huge show March 29th in San Diego at the House of Blues. It's going to be a giant show. And I think after that show would be a good time to come back and Noah can talk about his experience and all of that. Yeah, it'd be cool.
That'd be great.
I'm so excited about it. I'm very appreciative to know you, Diego. You're an amazing man. I knew that the minute I met you, and then spending those days in Peru and getting to know you and connecting with you and you allowing to hold space for me has been incredible. And I know I can always turn to you for anything. And for that, I just appreciate you being the incredible human that you are.
Same, brother. I appreciate you too, Noah.
Stephen, close us out. Let's wrap this up.
Oh, it's always, there's the checklist. One, smash that subscribe button if you like the episode and what we're up to, and come along for this journey with us. And two, if you see somebody hurting or you see somebody super joyous, celebrate with them or maybe give them a hug and try to help them out. Thank you so much, Diego. That was, you're awesome.
Yeah, you guys too. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you, brother. All right. That's it.
I do this and then